Good morning. Today I want to help you to reflect a little bit. What does it mean to be a Catholic? And what are we defending? I want to start off by telling you a little story about what happened yesterday. I was at Mass yesterday and a girl, she was sitting beside me and she went up for Holy Communion. Now, it turns out all she wanted was a blessing. I think she hadn't been to confession for a while. She didn't want to receive Jesus. And so, with a lot of integrity and a lot of honesty, she just went up to get a blessing. But for whatever reason, the priest didn't hear her properly and gave her Holy Communion. And I guess with the rush and with the crowd, she didn't really know what to do, and so she had the Holy Communion in her hand. And so she went back to her seat, a little bit conflicted. On one hand, she didn't want to receive or to swallow the Holy Communion because she knew she wasn't prepared. On the other hand, she knew that it wasn't right to keep it in her hand. At the same time, this lady on the other side spotted her. I started pointing, started accusing. She has Holy Communion. She hasn't eaten Holy Communion. And of course, there are people, sadly, who do steal communion for other purposes. And Jesus is present, and so we must be respectful. And we must love Jesus. On the other hand, we do live in a world where there's a lot of confusion there, there's a lot of error there, and sometimes people don't quite know. Sometimes you have non-Catholics, for example, that enter into a Catholic church, and they think that Holy Communion is just like a free biscuit almost being handed out to everybody. So people don't know. So on one hand, we also are called, you see, to be compassionate and to be understanding. And so I turned to this girl and I said, "What's the problem?" And she explained to me. And I understood, so I told her, I said, "Okay, well, look, don't make a big deal about it. How about maybe you give the Holy Communion back to the priest, or if you like, I can take it." So when I said that, she let me take it and I ate it myself. And so, problem solved, so to speak. Or was it? Well, you see, after Mass, the ladies were staring at me. Who was I and what did I do? And one of them, to be fair, instead of judging, she came up very politely, kindly, and she listened. And I explained to her exactly what had happened, and she was very relieved. But the other one, she was not prepared to listen. The other one was on her high horse of she took Holy Communion, she shouldn't have taken Holy Communion, the priest shouldn't have given her Holy Communion, blah, blah, blah. And I really said to myself, I said, gosh, is this how far we've come? Do you think you're defending God? Do you think you're defending Jesus by accusing people and by behaving like this? And so I began to say to myself, what does it mean to be a Catholic? And you see, it reminded me of many situations I've been through my own life when I have been judged. People know I'm Catholic, people know I'm gay, and so people jump to conclusions. People jump to all sorts of conclusions that I'm evil, that I'm doing this, that I'm doing that, that I'm a hypocrite, blah, blah, blah. And in many cases too, I've been gossiped about, talked about, and even I remember in Medjugorje at one stage. An incident sadly happened with the priest, and the priest afterwards denied all knowledge of it, basically allowed us to get into a lot of trouble, and we were accused, me the ringleader, of basically being evil and trying to destroy a holy priest. And again, the Catholics in that place at the time largely took the priest's side, and as a result we were ostracized, we were shamed. And there was no one to listen to us. Even one woman, and she lives in a castle over there, and she had been good friends, and she told me afterwards I was no longer welcome to go to her house. I could no longer visit, even though her castle is open to everybody, all the public. She said she couldn't. It would be hypocrite of her to let me visit after what I had apparently done. And you see, at times I said to myself, but what did I do? But yet nobody was there to listen. And just like this girl yesterday, there are many, many, many people who, for whatever reason, find themselves in weird situations. There are many people that find themselves in situations that don't fit into the black and white Catholic norm, if you like. There are people that are divorced. There are people that are remarried. There are people who have had abortions. There are people who are in alternative spiritualities. There are people who are struggling with all sorts of addictions. There are people who are gay, there are people who are transgender, there are people who are lesbians, there's every sort of a mix out there. But you know what? Every single person has a story. And you see, Jesus says, judge not and you shall not be judged. Jesus isn't saying that there's no such thing as right or wrong, but he's saying we can't accuse people of knowing what they're doing is right or knowing what they're doing is wrong, because we live in a time where there's a lot of confusion out there. We live in a time where there are a lot of problems in the church, and so people need to be loved into the truth. And at times we need to ask ourselves questions too. At times we need to ask ourselves questions, well, is my behaviour correct? Do I know that I'm in the truth? Is there problems with my truth? And you see, we need to be humble. And if evangelization is to be successful, we have to ask ourselves questions about our theology. But we also have to ask ourselves questions about our pastoral care. Because if we have a type of a theology that drives people away from God due to rules and regulations, and that doesn't take into account their human experience, their human fragility, the human heart, the healing process, well, then our Catholicism isn't Catholicism at all. Then our Catholicism is some sort of impossible obstacle course to heaven. There's nothing encouraging about it. There's nothing human about it. And you see, this is what happens when we don't trust enough in the Holy Spirit. It turns back into rules, rules, and more rules. And Catholics very easily then turn into Pharisees, turn into police officers of the truth. And yet many of them will also be heartless monsters that basically will not listen, do not really care, because all they care about is the outward appearance of keeping the truth. And you see, today it's very simple. We're all called to following Jesus. But the journey is a journey, first and foremost, on the inside. It's a journey of honesty, a journey of integrity, a journey of personal transformation, a journey of humility. And when we meet Jesus on the inside, we also meet our brokenness, we meet our pride, we meet our stubbornness, we meet our arrogance, we meet our lack of knowledge, we meet all these things. And when we meet these things in ourselves, then we're in no position to judge anybody else. And then when we meet somebody else who seems to be far away from Jesus or who doesn't quite understand what's going on, or like that girl yesterday who receives Holy Communion and doesn't quite understand, we don't march over there like an army officer. Instead, we could walk over there gently and meekly and just say, is everything okay? Can I help you? And you see, that's what we're called to. We're called to love, just like Our Lady would love. And for me, I'm passionate about this because I'm constantly meeting people in the gay community especially who have been terribly, terribly, terribly judged by Catholic people. And at times, it is cruel, it is heartless. And these people that are judging them, they think they're defending the truth. They think that they're protecting the church. They think that they're God's elite, chosen in these end times to protect the church from the evil of Satan. But yet little do they realize that at times Satan is using them like dummies. At times they're the very reason that people are not able to come to the church for healing. They're the very reason at times that people are getting discouraged, people are giving up, people are running away in shame. People find that the church is a church of perfection and that it has no place for sinners. And so you see, my message today is very, very simple. Let us seek Jesus in our hearts. Let us become acutely aware of our own brokenness, of our own need for Jesus, of our own hypocrisy, of our own emptiness, of our own lack of trust, of our own lack of faith. Let us remember that everything we do know has come from a grace. For example, if I know today that Jesus is present in Holy Communion and that he should be respected and loved, that has come because someone has taught me and because I've received a grace into my heart to believe it. But 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I might not and I didn't believe it in the same way, and perhaps you didn't either. And so let us not be prideful when it comes to being Catholic. We too could have been born Muslim, Hindu, anything, and we might not know anything about Catholic. And so let us not think that we're God's elite just because we're born Catholic. Because the reality is, if we're born Catholic, then we might be God's chosen. But remember what he says, to those whom a lot has been given, a lot will be expected. And what he's expecting isn't that we parade around our Catholicism like a march on a St. Patrick's Day. What he's expecting is that we be meek, we be humble, we be loving, we be caring, we be kind, we be compassionate, that we defend the poor, that we stand for justice, that we be peacemakers, that we reconcile people, that we help to transform the church, that we're truthful about the mistakes and errors in the church, and that we'll be people of humility. And so today, let us take the hand of Our Lady and let us go before her, because she is the Queen of humility. And she knows that she received everything she has and is from Jesus, from God. And not one single grace, not one single ounce of knowledge she has did not come from God. And so she knows that, and so she's not boasting about it. And so let us be lovers of people, lovers of God, and lovers of the truth. May you have a wonderful week, and at the same time, may you guard that in your hearts and ask yourself that question this week: where perhaps have you and are you judgmental? And try to do something about that this week through words, through actions, through deeds, and in prayer. Thank you for listening.